Live. Sab, J. Peace, thanks for being here. I'm going to let a few people trickle in, and then we're going to have a great talk about the 7 lessons that school does a very effective job of teaching. Because it's a common misconception that school does a poor job. And it only depends upon the definition by which you're applying your judgment of school, because there are certain things the school system does such a great job at that large segments of the population are unable to think critically, and we're going to talk about why that is. I'm also going to address my community guidelines strike, which I was banned for the last 24 hours, and you'll be surprised, it actually made me gain more respect for the platform of TikTok. So I know what you say, how could it be that you would gain respect for a platform for giving you a guideline strike? Well, I'll talk about that. And anyway, I'm very optimistic about the platform, and I think that we'll continue to have a good working relationship in the future. So yesterday was a rough day for me, but that just comes with the territory of social media. I did write a book on social media censorship for children, and surely enough, I was hit with a guideline strike. All right, so let's get into the 7 lessons taught in public school. Again, I am across the country visiting my parents, so I'm not at my typical setting. So, in the late 80s, there was a teacher, John Taylor Gatto. He was the New York City Teacher of the Year in 1988, 1989, 1990, and he really is the inspiration for a lot of what I do. And Gatto would abruptly resign from his position. He was the New York State Teacher of the Year, and he resigned. And he took out a full-page ad in the New York Times. And he basically said that he no longer felt right about doing to children what he sees public school do to them every day. And he would go on to write a book called, a few books, Dumbing Us Down, Weapons of Mass Instruction. Hey guys, thanks for being here. And these books would outline the baseline structural deficiencies of the public school system and why it can't be fixed with new teachers, it can't be fixed with different curriculum, it can't be fixed with increased funding. The problem isn't science, the problem isn't math, because what Gatto pointed out is that public school is good at 7 essential lessons, and it achieves its goals. So it just, if you're judging public school, is it effective, is it not? Well, based on this criterion, yes, public school is very effective at what it does. So the first lesson taught, and by the way, we can apply these 7 lessons to your homeschools, and by understanding them, you could better structure your homeschool to make sure you don't replicate the structural deficiencies of public school. So the first lesson taught in public school is confusion. That everything is taught out of context, right? And we see this with that 8 a.m. to 3 p.m. schedule, that regimented math class for 45 minutes, science class for 45 minutes. By the way, if you guys want to chime in, you have any questions, I'm very interactive, so feel free to ask me whatever you're thinking about. Give me your thoughts, your experiences with public school, how it jives with what I'm saying, and we'll just take it from there, because I'm here to not only educate you, but to keep everyone entertained and to make sure that you have all your questions answered. Is that Paddington Bear on your shirt? I'm not familiar with Paddington Bear, but I do consider myself a bear, and I'm the author of the Cubs to Bear series, so when I see a shirt with a bear on it, I'm quick to buy it. By the way, I'm very interested in promoting other people's small businesses, so I am considering setting up a avenue by which people can promote their businesses on my live streams. So let me know if that's something you would be interested in. And no, I'm not in California. Thank the good Lord I'm not in California. Actually, I'm currently visiting my parents in New York, so it's not much better. But I live in I live in the South, and it's beautiful and free there, and everyone ignores the so-called, not that I would ever suggest this, but everyone ignores the so-called mandates, and if you didn't turn on the television, you wouldn't know there's anything going on in the world. So I suggest you move to a place like that. No babies yet, but still buying your books. That's amazing. Thank you so much. And it's people like you that make the world better. I can't tell you how many creators I send $5 a month, $10 a month to because I believe in what they do. You got to support good people. So the first lesson taught in public school is confusion. Everything is taught out of context. So you'll hear students and they'll say, "Oh, I hate math. Oh, I hate science." Well, they don't hate math. They don't hate science. They hate sitting in that math class and doing regimented fractions, right? You hate that. I hate that. Your mother hated that. Your father hated that. Everybody hates that, right? I don't like the word hate. I should use a different word. But you hear children say, "Oh, I don't like math. I hate math class, science class." And they're right, because everything is taught out of context. Just got here. What online school do you suggest? Well, to start, I suggest you join my platform, Homeschools Connected, for $10 a month, promo code CONNECT. But there's Time for Learning is a great program. Becca is a great program. These are online programs. They're actually both accredited, or at least they have an accredited option. Not that you need that. Accredited just means that they have a physical location and that a federal or state accreditation body reviewed their curriculum and said it meets with Department of Education standards. But you don't need that to get into most colleges. So anyway, some parents like that. But Time for Learning and Becca. But everything in public school is taught out of context, right? It's confusion. It's like, when am I ever going to use this? And children are right. Now, you compare that with what happens in a homeschool, for example. Maybe math is taught a little bit differently. So one assignment I love to give the homeschool families I do consultations for is to assign their child a summer garden box. And we're going to talk about how this relates to teaching them math and how that differs from what happens in the public school system, right? Because in public school, confusion is taught. This is all taught out of context. But you give your child a garden box assignment and say, "Okay, the first thing I want you to do is to make a garden box." All right, well, they're going to need the measurements, right? They have to learn measurement system. They're going to have to learn how many feet their 2x4s are, right? Whatever it might be. They need to learn, do they need 6-foot pieces of wood, 4-foot pieces of wood, 10-foot pieces of wood? What are the dimensions of the garden box that they're building? So they learn basic math in context, right? Outside of confusion. And with real-world application, they put their garden box on the ground and you say, "Okay, well, you got to plant seeds." Well, you read the labels on the little seed packets with them, and it says, this lettuce needs to be planted 6 inches apart from other seeds, right? I say, okay, well, now you need to determine what you want to plant and what the surface area is, right? So now you say, okay, well, Dad, Mom, how do I figure out surface area? Oh, well, let's look that up. And with them, you go onto Google and you look up how to calculate surface area. You get the equation, you do the measurements, and you have them actually calculate in context, outside of confusion, the surface area in that garden box. And do you think that's something they'll forget? Right? Is that something they'll forget? What do you think? Yes? No? Right? Nope. Right. Nope. Nope. Not at all. Well, in public school, no, right? The way children are taught, right? They're sitting in a classroom at a desk and they're giving, they're given a word salad problem. There is a garden box. It is a length of 10 feet and a width of 5 feet, whatever it might be. Can you calculate the surface area? And it's just, right, because they're physically they're more physically interacting with it. They're more likely to engagement helps you learn, right? You learn through doing. And then it's also very in context because they're trying to put together this garden box that they're going to manage. And now they're calculating surface area just one time. And they'll remember it better than a month of school of doing regimented calculations over and over again because it's completely out of context, right? The same thing with, a science class, right? You could sit a child down every day at 9 a.m. and say for 45 minutes you're going to read this science textbook. Well, when am I ever going to use this? When I do science with my son, he's 3 years old, he loves to make volcanoes, right? We get all the ingredients, we get the baking soda, right? We get the dish soap, we put everything together, and boom, the volcano erupts into the sky and we talk about what's happening. He loves seeing what things float and what things don't float. So when he's in the bathtub, I bring all these different items. I'll bring a rock, I'll bring rubber duckies, we'll see what floats, what doesn't. Then we fill items up that float with water. And when you fill them up with water, then they sink. We talk about, well, what's your theory? What's your hypothesis as to why some things float and others don't, right? And then we eliminate factors and he determines for himself what density is, right? It's a learning in context. Love this. This is why we homeschool. Love your content. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. And like I said, anyone who wants to join my private homeschool community, that's $10 a month, promo code CONNECT. Or if you want a consultation, go to my website or the link in my profile. I do consultations. Wow, the sun just came out. I live in the Carolinas and I'm in New York and I was like, it's cold here, but the sun just showed up from behind the clouds. Man, I'm going to take this sweater off in a minute. But the first lesson taught in public school is just that. It's confusion. And by the way, the replays of all these, I do post on YouTube on a day delay. So yesterday I did a stream. Actually, I was on a community guidelines strike, which I'll discuss in a little bit, which actually made me gain respect for TikTok. But 2 days ago, I did a stream on financial literacy for children. Really powerful stuff. You should all check that out on the Classical Learner YouTube page. So the second lesson that children are taught in school is indifference. And we talked about this a little bit, but we've all heard children say, when am I ever going to use this? And we all know that they're correct. I'm a physical learner and have ADHD, so in school was always hard for me. I loved homeschool concept. Yeah, well, you want to figure out how your child learns, right? If they're a physical learner, let them learn hands-on. If they're an auditory learner, let them learn through hearing. If they're a visual learner, let them learn through seeing, right? So we got to figure out the way that our children learn. By the way, if any of you would like to be interviewed by me on this podcast, 12 o'clock every day, email me, classicallearnertoday@gmail.com, and I'll have you on as a homeschool parent. I'd love to get your perspective and hear about your experience. So the second lesson taught in public school is indifference. When am I ever going to learn this? Well, let's take our garden box example of what I would do. So first we have our child make a garden box. I'm going to sit down. Make a garden box. They do the construction. They calculate the surface area. They plant their seeds. And now they're growing something physical. They're growing something tangible. And at the end of the summer, they take care of it every day. You see the plants sprout up, the tomatoes, the cucumbers, the green beans, and they have something that's in context. When am I ever going to use this? Right now. And from there, you can really put everything into context as to why what they're doing is important. So what I've done with families is after they do this garden box, which is something I'm very passionate about, I give them options at the end of the summer. So the first option would be, I also suggest you teach your children cooking because it's a world skill that we could use to teach them business. The first thing I suggest is they take the ingredients that they grew over the course of the summer and they use that to host a cooking event, right? So maybe they cook something, then we teach them how to send out invitations to family members. Hey, I'm hosting this event, and they cook an original meal with the products that they grew for their family. Another option would be you have them bake cookies or something of that nature, put on a bake sale. But another option is to take all the ingredients that they grew over the course of the summer, right? Like if they planted tomato plants, they could get a lot of tomatoes. And then to set up a small mock farmer's market on their block and actually sell the tomatoes they grew for profit to their neighbors, to their friends, to their families. You could help them create flyers. They could put flyers up. They could put flyers in their neighbors' mailboxes. They could send out video invitations to family and friends that they're hosting this farmer's market with the crops that they grew. And by doing this, you're teaching them everything very much in context. They see why it has real-world application. And you'll see that when children do activities like this, they're very excited about it. They're very engaged. And it's a complete contradiction to what you see in the public schools, which are teaching everything out of context. So there's confusion and indifference, right? Why am I learning this? I don't understand it. It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't relate to anything in my life. And when am I ever going to use that? And that is the first two lessons that children are taught in public school, which is why public school students don't enjoy school. And it ties in with everything that we're seeing in our society. The third lesson taught in public school, and this is a big one, is intellectual dependency. Children are taught to outsource their thinking to authority. And this is the most important lesson taught in public school and why I would never allow my child to attend. Children are taught that truth comes from authority. Where have we seen that over the course of the last 18 months, right? People with lab coats on, to much of the population, are essentially the priest of the modern world. If someone with a lab coat says this is true, it's science. Come on, it's science. Well, of course, they're not actually doing science, right? They're just using the authority of the name of science to claim that they can't be questioned. But of course, anyone that's doing actual science knows that as soon as you stop questioning it, it's no longer science. It's ironic, isn't it? But the population has been so trained through public school that truth comes from a textbook and truth comes from the teacher, which later becomes a person in a lab coat, that they lack the ability to recognize when someone in a lab coat is lying to them. Maybe they've been purchased, maybe they're working for a pharmaceutical company, maybe they are getting a cushy government job, but they've been unable to distinguish what is actual science, right, the scientific method, from what is the authoritative messaging of using the name of science, that capital S, God science. We said it, we're a scientist, how dare you question it? Well, where does this come from? Nailed it, thank you. Why is so much of the population, what do you recommend during the winter months, kind of like the farm box? You could build a greenhouse. You can build bird houses in your house. You could do construction projects. I worked with a child that was actually making benches. And I actually had that child donate one of the benches to a church and then put out flyers, or had the church agreed to put up a flyer that this bench was donated by so-and-so. And if you want to hire them to make you a bench, this is a little kid, by the way, this is fantastic. It's like a 6-year-old. If you want to hire them to make a bench, you could call this number, call their parents, and, set up a bench. So, yeah, there's so much you can do. You just have to be creative. Does the kid version of what you are saying now part of your kid books? Yeah, so my kid books are designed to reveal the mechanisms by which corporations and institutions manipulate people, right? So like my book on social media censorship, which, by the way, I've been banned for 24 hours from TikTok, but it actually made me gain respect for the platform, ironically. So I'll talk about that. But my book on social media, I'll talk about that in a minute. My book on social media censorship goes through the journey of Stand Up Bear. And basically, we at the start of the book, the Saving Puppy Center was allowing coyotes to adopt kittens and puppies, right? So they weren't saving puppies. The coyotes were eating the children, essentially. So the Saving Puppy Center is allowing coyotes to adopt little children. The coyotes are eating them. So Stand Up Bear uses his platform as a stand-up comedian to call that out. And the next day, he's accused of a thought crime, right? And he's banned, right? He can no longer do stand-up comedy. So then he's not deterred. He takes his message to the Blue Mountain Birds, which is the Twitter logo. So he writes his message down, and the Blue Mountain Birds are flying his message all over the place. But then he's accused of being anti-bird, right? And he's censored for that. So then he puts his face on the front of a book, Facebook, right? And he puts his message out there. But the trolls put up red flags, and his Facebooks are burned. Then he takes his message to the Me and YouTube, right? Which is a tube that he's shooting his messages through. But he's accused of hate speech and accusing coyote and talking derogatory of coyotes, who are a protected group, right? And the idea behind it is to open up conversations between parents and children. So you would say to your child, well, what's the problem with calling out the Saving Puppy Center? And the child would say, well, they were hurting puppies. You say, yeah, but they're called the Saving Puppy Center. How are they hurting puppies? Well, just because their name is the Saving Puppy Center doesn't mean they're hurting puppies. So you see how this opens up conversations, and it's kind of reflects what's happening in the real world. And you're teaching children to think critically, right? That just because something is labeled something doesn't mean that's what it is. And just because Stand Up Bear is accused of being anti-bird doesn't mean he's anti-bird, right? So anyway, it's all about critical thinking. And in terms of my ban from TikTok, which I found very interesting, right? The guy that wrote a book on social media censorship was just banned from TikTok, and now he's saying that it actually made him gain more respect for the platform. So yesterday, I attempted to release a TikTok which covered the what I'm covering right now, the 7 lessons taught in public school. So it was basically a video of me going like this with the song, We Don't Need No Education. And in the middle of the video, for 1 second, I went like this, and I panned to the kitchen, which was my mother was there, my wife was there, my infant daughter there, and my 3-year-old son was in the seat next to me eating blueberries. And he didn't have a shirt on. Well, as soon as I posted the videos, it was 1 second of my son without a shirt on. And as soon as I posted the video, the algorithm picked it up and said, you have a community guideline strike. So I was like, come again? So I looked at it, and it said that violates their policy of protecting minors. So I appealed, because I was like, well, just watch the video. It's clearly not that. And I actually lost the appeal, which I could have been bitter about, because I got a strike. But I actually wasn't, because if TikTok is that committed to protecting children, I would rather them be stringent with that type of thing. If their rule is you can't ever post a video where your son doesn't have a shirt on, versus, what some of these other platforms allow, I actually gained respect for the platform. I was like, you know what? I think that's a great policy. So on the one hand, I was a little bit bitter because I got a community guideline strike and I couldn't post for 24 hours. On the other hand, I was like, you know what? I actually think that's a pretty cool policy of TikTok. So I couldn't post for 24 hours. I thought I actually gained respect for the platform, and that was my first community guideline strike on TikTok. So you live and you learn. But anyway, back to the 7 lessons taught in public school. So the first lesson is confusion. The second lesson is indifference. Math, science, they're all taught out of context. You're sitting at a desk for 45 minutes, and children don't have real-world applications, so they don't know, when am I ever going to use this, right? They should be doing things that make sense to them, right? Like when they're doing math and trying to learn surface area, they should be putting together a garden box and calculating surface area. It's physical, they're doing it with their hands, it's in context. Then why am I growing these seeds? Well, you're growing these seeds because why am I planting the seeds? Because it's going to give you food. You're going to grow this food, eat this food. It's going to make you big and strong. and then you can do business things with it. You're going to cook a meal for your family. You're going to set up a farmer's market. You're going to sell your tomatoes at the end of the summer to your neighbors. You're going to make money. Once you make that money, I'm going to teach you how to, remember I did a whole episode on financial literacy yesterday. I'm going to teach you, now you've earned money, I'm going to teach you what investing is, how you can invest in business, how you can invest in the stock market, how you can invest in this, how you can invest in that. And we're going to teach you financial literacy, how to grow your money. Then you can use that money to buy yourself toys or whatever you want, right? So everything that we're doing is in context, outside of confusion, the opposite of what's happening in these terrible public schools. I like it. How much does it cost to homeschool? Well, there are programs such as ABC Jesus Loves Me, the all-in-one homeschool, the Khan Academy, that are free. All right, guys, does anyone know what this is? I just got in the left corner, it says one new message. What is that? I keep getting them during the streams. I don't know what to do with them, how to view these messages. I don't know if that means someone like sent me money and I'm supposed to answer their question, or I have no idea. If anyone knows, please let me know. So these are free programs. And then if you join my private homeschool community, for Homeschools Connected, for $10 a month, promo code CONNECT, I constantly try to get free resources for the people in my community, and I guide them how to do all the extracurricular stuff like teach financial literacy at a very cheap price. 4 new messages. I don't know what that is. All right. I got 2 books you suggested, and I'm currently reading them. Amazing. Thank you. Time for Learning is pretty reasonable. Yeah, I like Time for Learning. I got that too. It's probably does my GPA from high school matter if I'm wanting to homeschool my kids? No, if you graduated from high school, you can legally homeschool in almost every state. In fact, in almost every state, as long as you have a GED, you can homeschool. And if you want to find out what the criterion is in your state, go to the Homeschool Legal Defense Association, click on your state, and it lists all the regulations as it relates to homeschool in your state. Maybe a message under your question box. All right, I'll figure it out. I don't know. Okay. All right. All right. So the third lesson is intellectual. You guys mind if I take this bear sweater off? Because I'm sweating bullets. It's hot out. It got hot out here. Oh, man. Oh, brother. You guys bringing the heat on me today. By the way, if you want the stream I did on financial literacy, go to my YouTube page, Classical Learner. I posted that this morning. I scroll everything. I post everything on a 1-day delay. So children are taught to outsource their thinking to authority, that truth comes from either the textbook or the teacher. And they're also taught that, in terms of intellectual dependency, that you only do the work that's assigned to you. And this is a big deal. This is a really big deal. Children go to math class and they're told to do this assignment, and they do the assignment. And they go to science class, they're told to do this. They go to history class, they're told to do that. And they're developing the habit of learning only happens when you're told to study something. Whereas with homeschool, it's the complete opposite. And this is so important for your homeschool. You have to let your children get into the habit of pursuing their own education. So I did a consultation last week with a family whose child was interested in photography. And now we have them on a track where they're actually studying the art form of photography. So they're learning something they want to learn. They decided what they want to learn. And then from there, we're going to guide them to do business things. We're going to guide them to... Did I just cut out? Sorry about that. I clicked on Twitter by accident. We're going to guide them to set up photography shoots and things of that nature. Maybe they could do photography of newborn babies. Maybe they could do photography at the local prom, whatever it might be, so they could learn to do business through the new skill that they acquire. Which is why I always tell parents, skills over subject matter. Not that subjects don't matter, but if you teach your children skills, growing plants, photography, videography, construction, engineering. You could then take those skills, baking, cooking, and use that to get them real world business experience, develop an entrepreneurial mindset. So whereas in school, children only do what they're told, in homeschool, we allow our children to study subjects that are important to them. And what a difference that makes. State testing is the worst. I hated not having any skill classes. Yeah, well, in homeschool, we still do the state test, but those aren't our top priority. You know, homeschool in most states, it mandates you take the state test. It doesn't say what grade they have to get, right? So they're fine. And the truth is that homeschool students typically perform better anyway because they're learning everything in context, and learning is actually something your children pursue and enjoy because they like it, not because it's compulsory. My son is very unmotivated unless it's gaming, learning disabilities, ADHD, possibly a sleep disorder. Okay, well, I didn't hear that your son is unmotivated. I heard that your son is really motivated by gaming. So what I would do is start to focus on computer coding. So there are games. Oh God, what's the name of it? It's eluding me. Depending on how old he is, you could get him into Codable, which is a really cool website. If he's into Minecraft, then there is a program through Microsoft, which you teach computer coding through Minecraft. There are tons of other sites. I don't have Homeschools Connected, my platform, in front of me right now because I'm outside. But if you go on my platform, I literally have all of these options available that people do for computer coding. That's Homeschools Connected. You should sign up. So you could get him into computer coding. You said he has ADHD. Okay, well, you need to change the way he's learning. Instead of having him sit down for an hour, have him learn in 20-minute blocks and then just get up and let him run around for an hour, right? Do 5 20-minute blocks over the course of a day. Let him run around the rest of the time. Maybe get curriculum that centers around nature, that Charlotte Mason style, getting out into nature, doing hands-on activities, using his observations, maybe collecting rocks, comparing the similarities and differences of rocks. Again, this depends on his age. So he's motivated. He's just not motivated the way other children are. So restructure your homeschool to teach in a way that works better for him. What is the most important thing to look into when starting a homeschool? So if you go to my YouTube page, I've posted a ton of videos over the last week and a half about what to do when you just start homeschooling. That's, basically you want to familiarize yourself with your responsibility as a parent record keeper. Go to Homeschool Legal Defense Association, hslda.org, and figure out the regulations in your state. Familiarize yourself with unschooling, Charlotte Mason, Montessori, the classical education. Figure out the way your child learns. Do they have ADHD? Are they a visual learner? Are they a auditory learner, a kinesthetic learner? And then based on all that information, structure your child's education in a way that works for them. So I would say that is probably, but check out my YouTube channel, Classical Learner. You'll find all that child's education in a way that works for them. So I would say that is probably, but check out my YouTube channel, Classical Learner. You'll find all that information, but that's basically where I would start you. By the way, I do one-on-one homeschool consultations through my website where I set up your entire homeschool. That involves 2 separate meetings between us and my formal write-up of all my recommendations. Also, through the link in my profile, I do phone calls where you could get me on the phone, questions where you could ask me questions, or you just join my private homeschool community, $10 a month, and I will answer your questions at infinite because I take care of my people. Thank you. More need to homeschool. Take back your children's minds. Absolutely. Don't allow our children to be brainwashed. You know, you have to raise your children for the world they're growing up in, not the world that we grew up in. And right now, there is a medical authoritarian takeover of this world, and you want to make sure your children are able to think critically, and you want to make sure they're entrepreneurs, because we've seen, if you're an employee, if you rely on other people to make money, right, like an employer, like I rely on all of you to make money. I can't do this unless Like, there are people in my homeschool community that don't even have homeschool age children that just want to pay me $10 a month. So like I can only do this because the people fund me, right? They pay me for consultations, they join my community, or they just pay me monthly because they believe in what I do. But that's my business, right? I have a business. Well, you want to raise your children to be entrepreneurs. This way, they're not told they have to cover their breathing holes. They're not told they have to get a medical procedure you don't want them to get, they don't want to get. But that only happens when you live a certain way. So we're raising entrepreneurs. We're not raising employees. Public school system, we'll get into, that's one of the lessons taught in public school. We'll get into that. Public school, laugh out loud. Public school is so crazy. I only like laugh out loud if you're actually laughing out loud, by the way, because I feel like people use that passive aggressively. But in this case, yeah, public school, laugh out loud for sure. My twins are young, but we will be homeschooling. We have already purchased your books. I love it. Thank you so much. Public school is just push kids through. Right, it's like they learn math, right? Like they don't get addition down, right? They struggle with addition. And instead of giving them more time to learn basic addition, you're like, all right, the class is moving on. Now you have to learn multiplication. And by that time, they're like, oh, I hate math. I quit. I don't want to do this, right? Yes, spitting facts. Thank you for bringing attention. Yeah, so far we've covered confusion, indifference. Everything's taught out of context, right? Intellectual dependency. Truth comes from the textbook. Truth comes from authority. And only do what the teacher assigns you. Next is, the fourth lesson is provisional self-esteem. So you only are told you're doing a good job when you're following the orders of a teacher, right? So if the teacher says, we're going to sit here and this is what we're going to do, if you do it, they say, okay, Matthew's doing a good job. But if Matthew wants to study something that he's interested in, right? Maybe, for example, he is interested in gaming, right? Which now, members of my community are learning, right? Like if Matthew's interested in gaming, then we're going to study gaming. And that doesn't mean we won't do the other things too. But if he tries to do that in a public school, well, he's going to be told he's doing a bad job, right? And he doesn't get that praise, that reinforcement from the authority figure, the teacher. And we as parents in public school, we're telling, oh, listen to the teacher, which takes us to our fifth lesson, emotional dependency. You are only right. So you have provisional self-esteem. You're only right when you're doing what the teacher says. And emotional dependency, you only have value. You're only as valuable as the teacher says. So if you work really hard on something and you do your best and that teacher comes in and puts a big C minus on that paper that you worked really hard on, well, now your self-esteem, right? You're emotionally dependent on the approval of that teacher, right? You got a bad grade. Oh man, you're so bad, right? You didn't get an A, right? You're emotionally dependent on that authority. And that's such a horrible thing. And worst off than that, because the other lesson that's teaching, because we already covered that truth only comes from authority, right? So if you disagree with what the teacher says, well, now, right, you disagree with what the teacher says, now you get a bad grade. You're emotionally dependent on the approval of authority. So if you disagree with Dr. Fauci when you're older, no, you're emotionally dependent on that authority. You need Dr. Fauci's approval. And that's what we're seeing in our society today. And that begins in public school. So you, for example, someone who understands history, let's use the Civil War, and maybe your student reads the primary writings of Abraham Lincoln and Stonewall Jackson, an assignment that I love. And after they read those primary writings, they say, you know what? I don't think the Civil War was about slavery, really at all, which would be accurate. And your teacher says, no. The textbook says the Civil War was all about slavery because political parties are the ones that put the Department of Education together, and they push these narratives for political reasons because it's easier to divide people. So the teacher says, no, slavery is the reason for the Civil War. And you say, no, it's not. Well, now you got an F. You don't have the approval of authority. And then these children go back to their parents and say, you listen to the teacher. You better get better. You better get good grades. And 20 years later, when Dr. Fauci says, why don't you put on your mask? you put on that mask because you need that emotional approval of authority. So our 5 lessons: confusion, indifference, intellectual dependency, provisional self-defense, self-esteem, and emotional dependency. How do you do grades, or just how do you do improvements instead? So here's what I'll tell you about grades. I don't never do grades, but I don't really believe in grades. So for example, let's say you do a writing assignment and you sit your child down and you say, I want you to do 1 page of creative writing about, I don't know, whatever you want them to write about. So they write that page, and rather than giving them a grade at the end of the assignment, I might give them a rubrics. I might say the assignment called for 3 paragraphs, beginning, a body, and a conclusion. Right? And so after they write it, I would read it over with them, and I would ask them, well, do you have a beginning to this? Do you have a topic sentence? What is it? Can you show me the topic sentence? Right? And go over it with them, and maybe they'll be like, oh, you know what? I didn't have a topic sentence. And then you could say, okay, well, if we were going to formulate one, what would you add now? We don't have to go back and add everything, but if you were going to rewrite this, how would you make the topic sentence? And you could go over options with them. And then you go over the grammar, the spelling. You say, oh, look, I see you didn't put a comma. And, so it looks like, I think this is a run-on sentence because look how it goes. But, what you could do is put a comma here. And what you're doing with this, you're not grading them, but you're actually involving them in the grading process or the editing process. So rather than just putting red marks on a paper and saying you got a C, you're actually editing their paper with them, and you're showing them, oh, look, you could put a comma here. And the next time, they might not get that the next time, but you're going to review it with them again. And eventually, they're going to pick up, because they're getting in the habit of editing their own work. They're going to be writing and say, wait a second, is this a run-on sentence? Their writing will start to improve because they're actually grading their own work. They're doing the editing. And the beautiful thing that happens when you teach a child writing in that manner is now when they do their reading, right, because they're in the habit of editing writing. When they do their reading, they'll actually start to pick up on the different ways in which authors structure their writing. So they'll actually start to pick up on the writings of people who are much more impressive writers than you and myself, right? So by getting them in the habit of editing their own work, they will surpass your own knowledge by the time they get to 9th grade, because they've been doing this since they were little, and we've only started doing this as adults. That answers your question. Can you imagine someone thinking public school is superior? Sorry, I came through the system, so I laugh out loud at that. Just want to make sure I answer all your comments. That is my son. My son is like that. How do you homeschool when you're working full-time? I'm desperate. Well, there are programs like Time for Learning, which are more student-led. Obviously the age of your student has a say on what you can do. You could find other families in your area and kind of partner up with them. So hey, if you take the children on Wednesday, I'd be willing to take your children on Thursday. Do you have a family member watching the children? Can you do these basic assignments with them? And we'll do our schooling and hours that aren't typical. Maybe we school from 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. Maybe we do our schooling on weekends. And during the week, we get our children into a camp or some type of setting like that. So, it's unique to every situation, but you just have to be creative. But to me, I would personally let a drunk monkey educate my children before I sent them to public school, because at least a drunk monkey isn't going to indoctrinate them, and at least a drunk monkey will teach them how to climb a tree, which is a skill of sorts. Maybe get some bananas. So the 5 lessons we've gone over so far: confusion and indifference. Everything is taught out of context, and children don't ever know when they're going to use it. Intellectual dependency. Truth comes from authority. Truth comes from the teacher. Provisional self-esteem. you do what the teacher says, otherwise you are out of compliance and you're told to be doing bad. Emotional dependency, you are only doing good when you agree with the dictations of the teacher, the dictations of the textbook, the dictations of a person in a position of authority. The sixth lesson is class position. Public school, and this is not by mistake, is structured in the same way that a corporate work day is structured, and do not think that is a coincidence. By the way, I stream every day here at 12 noon, and I repost the replays on my YouTube channel, Classical Learner. And if you want to schedule a consultation, you can do that through my website, or just a basic consultation through the profile on my TikTok. But my website, I set up your whole homeschool, so that's really cool. So class position. It is not a coincidence that public school is set up in the same way that a corporate workday is. Children are expected to go to school from 8 a.m. to 3 p.m. They're expected to be where they are told to be, when they are told to be. They are expected to do what work they're told to do, when they're told to do it. A corporate boss or a teacher is the one who decides if their work is good or if their work is not good. Public school is structured like a corporate workday because they are educating children to be corporate workers. They do not want your children to be entrepreneurs. I know your teachers do. There's good teachers, yada, 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 yada. But the Department of Education and the people putting together these systems, they are making corporate worker bees. Which is why you read a book like Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and he says all the people that worked for me were A students. And he says he was a C student. But his rich dad taught him how to be an entrepreneur, and now he has hundreds of millions of dollars, and he laughs and says all A students work for me. Because that's what school teaches. So school teaches confusion, indifference. Everything is out of context. When am I ever going to use this? Intellectual dependency. Children outsource their thinking to authority, the teacher, the textbook. Provisional self-esteem. Do what you're told to do when you're told to do it. Emotional dependency. You are only correct if you agree with the dictates of authority. If you agree with the dictates of the teacher. If you agree with the dictates of Dr. Fauci. Know your position. Go to school. Go to your corporate work at 8 a.m. You leave at 3 p.m. You go where you're told, when you're told to be there. You do what work you're told to do, when you're told to do it. And you only do a good job if that teacher or that corporate boss told you do a good job. And the last lesson, the last of the 7 lessons taught in public school, is that one cannot hide. Authority is always watching. You walk through metal detectors to go to school. There are hall monitors that monitor what you do in the hall, bathroom monitors that monitor what you do in the bathroom. You raise your hand to go to the bathroom. You do what you're told by the teacher. The teacher monitors you. If you do something other than what they say, you go to the principal's office and you are punished. Big Brother is always watching you. So when Edward Snowden... I was killing it there. When Edward Snowden blows the whistle and says that the United States of America, the NSA, is spying on every American, violating your constitutional rights, you have been so conditioned by that for so long in your public schooling that you say, what's the big deal? I don't really care. And when the next generation grows up and they're told that they have to wear a mask to work, or they're told that they have to get a medical procedure that is against their religious beliefs or against their personal beliefs or against their personal wishes, otherwise they can't work a job, they think that's normal because that's been normalized in public schools all over America and all over the world by people who do not care about them and do not have their best wishes at hand. I stream every day at 12 noon. I repost the replays on Classical Learner YouTube page. And if you want to set up a consultation, go to my website. I will set up your child's entire homeschool. If you have questions, you could check the link on my TikTok profile. I have options for phone calls. I have options for just regular tech keyboard consultations. Or if you want full-time access to me, join my private group, Homeschools Connected, and I'm happy to help you. Where are you getting these points? I want to share to my husband when I get home. Yeah, so if you want your husband to better understand the public school system, you could have him read a book called Dumbing Us Down by John Taylor Gatto, Weapons of Mass Instruction by John Taylor Gatto. And then once he realizes what public school is, once the two of you are aligned with your thoughts on public school, there's books like The 5-Hour School Week, which show just how amazing homeschooling can be. So that's where I would start. California actually has some of the better homeschool. Yeah, that's surprising, but California actually has some of the more lackadaisical homeschool regulations. So you have more options in terms of what you can do in California than most states, which is surprising because they're so dictatorial with everything else. What will they do when they make homeschool illegal? I'll start my own private school. I'll figure out the private school laws and I'll start a homeschool with a private homeschool with maybe 5 or 6 children of other parents in my area that have also been disenfranchised by the laws. There is no despair. There is no despair. If the government destroys our financial system, we sell our house, we get out of debt. If they tell us we can't go to the grocery store unless we have a medical passport, then we grow our own food. If they try to indoctrinate our children through the public school system, we homeschool our children. If they take over Hollywood and try to brainwash our children, then we make our own books, then we make our own television shows like Tuttle Twins is doing right now. There is no despair. If you think there was ever a time in human history where bad people weren't coming for you, you just don't know history, because there were times in history where Genghis Khan was knocking on your door and he was going to kill your men. Do you know what to your children and your wife, okay? They were going to rip you apart at the seams. So I don't ever want to hear despair. Oh my God, they're coming for me. Get out of here. This isn't the right place for you. We start our own businesses. I can't tell you how many people on the internet that I give $10 a month to. Tom Burnett, Owen Ben, Crow 77 Radio, Pockets of the Future, all these people that I give money to every month because they do amazing things. Because we build our own social media platforms, we educate our children, we support each other's businesses. I spend more money on the same products purchasing from people who own businesses that I know rather than go to Walmart, because let's just say Walmart's part of the takeover, okay? So there is no despair, and I don't want to hear that, so don't bring that here. By the way, I will be setting up an apparatus. I think I'm going to do it through a P.O. box in which you guys can promote your businesses or whatever you want to promote through my streams. I'm more than happy to do that. And as soon as I get back home, I'm visiting my parents across the country right now. So I'm at their house for a week or two. But as soon as I get back home, I'll be setting up an apparatus in which if you guys want to promote your stuff, I'll promote. So I'm at their house for a week or two. But as soon as I get back home, I'll be setting up an apparatus in which if you guys want to promote your stuff, I'll promote it. Out of California, the homeschool laws are better, but what's going on there is disgraceful. And I moved out of New York. I'm visiting my parents in New York right now. But I was here, but I saw what was happening, and I said there's no way I would allow my children to grow up under this type of authoritarianism. Where are you and where are your parents? That's it. I'm in the city that never sleeps or pushes back against tyranny. All right, guys. This has been a lot of fun. I post all the replays on the Classical Learner YouTube channel. My private homeschool group, Homeschools Connected. Use the promo code CONNECT. You could join for $10 a month, and you get pretty much full-time access to me. I'll answer your questions ad infinitum. If you have any, you want to do a basic consultation over the keyboard, check the link in my profile. If you want to do a phone conversation, check the link in my profile. Or if you want like the full shabam, I basically set up your homeschool for all essential purposes. Check the link in my website. You got to email me to set that up. But anyway, this has been a lot of fun. Please like, please share, tell your friends about me, And I stream every day at 12 o'clock, so I hope to see you tomorrow. And yes, I talk about education, which I know could bore people at times, but I also talk about the world and freedom and everything we're doing. And anything you want to talk about, I'm more than happy to get into it. So I'll be doing a stream tomorrow. I also plan on having homeschool parents on. If you'd like to be on my stream, if you're a parent, you feel like you want to share your experience. If you're a homeschool parent, you feel like you'd like to share your experience, email me at classicallearnertoday@gmail.com. Thank you so much. I'd be happy to have you on.